Welcome back from spring break. I hope everybody had a wonderful, relaxing, fun spring break. And we are back at school. This is your Wit and Wisdom video for Monday, March the 22nd. We are on day 27 of Module 3. This is our last week of Module 3, and then next week we get to start Module 4. I'm excited about that because I haven't really ever gotten to teach Module 4 more than a few days because 2 years ago when I started it, we never got to Module 4 because we started so late in the year. And then last year, we didn't get to do Module 4 because we didn't come back from spring break after the pandemic started. So this has been my first year of teaching Module 4, so I'm kind of excited about it. Anyway, so this is our video for today. It's going to be kind of short because we're starting our writing. So make sure you have your knowledge and response journal.
Welcome back, powerful thinkers. I'm Sue Sabella, your Great Minds teacher. Let's see what we need for today. Today you'll need Separate is Never Equal, Sylvia Mendez and her family's fight for desegregation, handout 21A, the SCAPE chart. You'll need a clean copy for today, and it's also a good idea to have your SCAPE chart from our last lesson to look at as an example. You'll also need your journal and a pencil. Please pause here to gather what you need and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so you are not going to need a new copy of the SCAPE chart. We are going to make a new copy in your journal on page 154 and 155, okay? So I've uploaded the photo for you, so if you want to pause the video and get your journal set up, and then hit play when you are ready, okay?
Today, we'll continue to explore this text through the use of quotations, and you'll also have a chance to explore another section of this text and to explode a moment using narrative writing. Let's get started. As we continue in this text, Mr. Mendez met Mr. Estrada, and Mr. Estrada was a veteran who served during World War II. When he came back to America, his children were not allowed to attend school with white children. Mr. Mendez said,
Es una injusticia.
"It's an injustice." And you know what an injustice is. Ruby taught us what injustice is, and also Dr. King. Pause here to tell your learning partner what injustice means, and just hit play when you're ready to continue. At this point in the story, Mexican children are still not allowed to go to school with white children. Why is this an injustice? Pause here to do some powerful thinking about that or to chat with a learning partner. Just hit play when you're ready to continue. How do I explode a moment in focusing question task 5? Let's take a look at the directions for assessment 27A, focusing question task 5. Task: reread pages 24 through 29 in Separate is Never Equal, Sylvia Mendez and Her Family's Fight for Desegregation by Duncan Tonatiuh. Write an exploded moment narrative from the point of view of Sylvia Mendez during the courtroom scene. Describe her response to injustice by describing her thoughts, feelings, and actions in this moment. The checklist for success says, be sure to include all of the following in your response. a setting, characters, action, problem, and the ending. And be sure when you include the ending that it's an ending for this exploded moment, this small section of time, not necessarily the end of the story. Please pause here to grab a clean copy, an empty copy of handout 21A, the SCAPE chart. If you don't have access to this handout, no worries. You can set up a SCAPE chart in your journal along with thoughts, feelings, and actions. Pause here to make sure you have the handout or to set up your journal and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so remember I asked you to do this earlier before we really started the video on page 154 and 155 of your journal.
Now that you're set up for success, let's take a look at the exploded moment process chart to follow each step of the exploded moment process. Number 1 tells us to reread sections of the text and look at pictures. Please pause here to reread the courtroom scene on pages 24 through 29. Just hit play when you're ready to move on to filling out the SCAPE chart.
Okay, so I am going to pause the video for 1 second while I pull up the book. Okay, so here we have started on page 24, okay? The trial was held at a courthouse in Los Angeles. Sylvia and her family, dressed in their best clothes, and sat in the courtroom to listen. The hearing lasted 5 days. Each day, Mr. Marcus called to the stand parents from the different districts in Orange County and the superintendents from each district, too. On the first day, Mr. Kent, the superintendent of the Garden Grove district, was questioned. He said that he sent children to the Mexican school to help them improve their English. That is a lie, thought Sylvia. Her English was as good as the English of any of the children at the Westminster School. Do you give the children any tests? Asked Mr. Marcus. Mr. Kent claimed he did. We do so by talking to them. That is another lie, Sylvia wanted to yell. No one had questioned her. They rejected her from the Westminster School without asking her a thing. For what other reasons do you send children to the Mexican school? Asked Mr. Marcus. Sylvia and her family braced themselves to hear what Mr. Kent would say next. For their social behavior, they need to learn cleanliness of mind, manner, and dress. They are not learning that at home. They have problems with lice, impetigo, and tuberculosis. They have generally dirty hands, face, neck, and ears. The Mendez family and others in the room stared at Mr. Kent in disbelief. What he was saying was not true. It was degrading. How many of the 292 children at the Mexican school are inferior to whites in personal hygiene? Asked Mr. Marcus. At least 75%. And in their scholastic ability, 75%. In what other respects are they inferior? In their economic outlook, in their clothing, and in their ability to take part in the activities of the school. Do you believe that white students are superior to Mexicans in the respects that you have mentioned? Yes. And is that one of the reasons they are being segregated? Yes. Time and time again, Mr. Mendez had asked, why can't my children attend the Westminster School? Now he had his answer. On the second day, Mr. Marcus called to the stand a 14-year-old student from the Mexican school in El Medina. Her name was Carol Torres. She spoke perfect English. It was clear that she had not been sent to the Mexican school because she had problems speaking the language, as the defense lawyers claimed. Mr. and Mrs. Mendez were questioned on the third and fourth day, and so was Mr. Harris, the superintendent of the Westminster School. Sylvia was not called to the stand, but she was ready to testify if they asked her to. She tried looking her best every morning, and she practiced what she would answer. On the fifth and final day of the hearing, Mr. Marcus called to the stand two education specialists to explain why it was bad to segregate children into different schools. Segregation tends to give an aura of inferiority. In order to have the people of the United States understand one another, it is necessary for them to live together. And the public school is the one mechanism where all the children of all the people go, said one of them. The judge nodded his head. He seemed to agree with this. Okay, now let's get back to the video. So see what we're going to do.
The second step in the exploded moment process is to fill out the scape chart. Pause here to fill out the scape chart and just hit play when you're ready to continue.
Okay, so let's do this part together. Okay, my button wasn't working. All right, so the first thing that we need to come up with is the setting. So for those pages that I just read, where was the setting? Where did that part of the story happen? It was in the courtroom. Good. So for the setting, we're going to write courtroom. Okay, so there we have the setting, the courtroom. And who were the characters in that part of the story? Well, obviously we have Sylvia. We had the lawyer, Mr. Marcus. We had a Mr. Kent, the superintendent of the one school. And the other main character was the judge. Okay, so we have Sylvia, Mr. Marcus, Mr. Kent, and the judge. And there are other secondary characters, like there's Carol Torres, there was Mr. and Mrs. Mendez, there was the Westminster Schools superintendent. So there were other secondary characters, but we're just focusing on the primary or the main characters for this moment. Okay. So what was the problem in this part of the story? What do you guys think? What was the problem? Well, what was Mr. Kent saying that could have been part of the problem? Mr. Kent, the superintendent of the white school, what was he saying about the Mexican children? So he was saying that the Mexican children were not as good as the white children, that they couldn't speak English, that they were dirty, that they weren't very smart, they didn't have nice clothes. So Mr. Kent tried to prove that Mexicans they're not as good. Okay, he said they were dirty, didn't speak English, And they were not smart. Okay, so our problem is that Mr. Kent was trying to prove that Mexicans are not as good as whites. He said that they were dirty, that they didn't speak English, and that they were not smart. And what was the action that happened on that page? Who did the action on this page? A majority of the action on this page was done by Mr. Marcus, the lawyer, the attorney. What did he do to try to solve this problem? He tried to prove that the Mexicans were equal. So we need to put that. Mr. Kent tried to prove that Mexicans are equal. All right, and then there's other action in the story. They called up Carol Torres. Okay, what did she do that helped prove that they could speak English? She spoke perfect English. So I'm going to put Carol spoke English. Okay, so there's part of our action that Mr. Kent tried to prove that Mexicans are equal and that Carol spoke English. Okay. And so then how did this moment end? Not the whole story, but just this moment in the courtroom. Think about the very last sentence from those pages about the judge. What did the judge do? He nodded his head. And usually when you nod your head about something, what are you doing? No, you're agreeing. It looks like you're agreeing. Okay, so the judge nodded his head and he seemed to agree. So now what you are going to do is you are going to fill in the thoughts, feelings, and the actions part. Okay, so when you're doing it, remember you are writing about just this small moment. Okay, hold on one second, guys. Okay, so you are going to be looking at Sylvia's thoughts, feelings, and actions because, again, you are going to be writing in first person point of view. You are pretending to be Sylvia. So when you're thinking about her thoughts, what was she thinking during this time in the courtroom? Ask yourself, I feel or I think, what would you think? Like, how did she specifically said, she specifically said in that part of the story that she thought that the men were lying. So you could say, I think he is lying. Or the feelings, she felt mad because no one was letting her talk. She didn't get called to the stand. So maybe she felt mad about that. And her actions, maybe she thought the judge was going to agree with them or be on their side because she saw the judge nodding his head. Okay, so you're going to fill out your thoughts, feelings, and actions that relate to this moment. That part you're going to do all on your own. Okay, so let's get back to our video, and it's almost done actually. Told you it would be a short one today.
Now let's take a look at step 3 in the exploded moment process. Jot down ideas about thoughts, feelings, and actions. What was Sylvia thinking? How did she feel in that courtroom? And what actions did she take? Pause here to jot down ideas about thoughts, feelings, and actions, and just hit play when you're ready to begin your narrative writing.
Okay, so we just did that part, but if you did not finish it, go ahead and pause now and finish working on it.
Now it's time to write the first draft of your narrative of your exploded moment. Be sure to use your escape chart and also what you jotted down for Sylvia's thoughts, feelings, and actions. And remember, before you write, it's so helpful to practice your narrative out loud. So be sure to take time to do that, as much time as you need. And then you can draft your first narrative. Just hit play when you're ready to wrap up our lesson for today.
Okay, so here's what you are going to do. You are going to work on this today. So we're going to be on page 156 in your journal. Page 156. And you are going to be answering the question that says, write an exploded moment narrative from the point of view of Sylvia Mendez during the courtroom scene. Describe her response to injustice by describing her thoughts, feelings, and actions in this moment. So you are going to need to make sure that in your narrative, you have the setting, the characters, the action, the problem, and the ending. Make sure you are writing in first person point of view. Remember, you are pretending to be Sylvia. You're going to have one thought, you're going to have one feeling, and one action detail from page 155. You are going to make sure that you have one time word or temporal word like today or yesterday or tomorrow, first, then, next, finally. And then you're going to make sure that you have an adjective, which describes a noun, and you're going to have an adverb, which describes a verb. Okay, so go ahead and I'm going to pause for just 1 second. Okay, so what you are going to do on page 156, you need to write on the top of the page, focusing question task 5, your exploded moment narrative. And then you're going to take the information from page 154 and 155, and you are going to write a narrative pretending to be Sylvia, experiencing that moment in the courtroom. Okay, so you're going to make sure that you include all of the setting and the characters and the problem and the action and the ending. Make sure that you have an adjective and an adverb. Make sure you're using first person point of view. Make sure that you use a temporal time word. Make sure you have a thought, feeling, and action in there. Okay, so I want to read you my example. All right, you guys ready? Okay, so today was the first day of the trial. We went to Los Angeles to the courthouse. I dressed in my best clothes. I sat with my family. Mr. Kent took the stand and told lies more than once. I was so angry that I wanted to yell, but instead I stared in disbelief. I felt hurt that he said such mean things about Mexican American students. I wonder why no one from the school asked me questions. The judge nodded his head. I hope this means he agrees with us. Okay, so let's go through that. What words did I use to show first person point of view? I used the word I a lot. I used us. I used the word me. Okay, so there are 3 of our big first person point of view words, I, me, and us. I used the word today. That was my temporal word. I told my setting. I said the courthouse in Los Angeles. I had Mr. Kent and myself and the judge. Those are 3 of the characters that we had on there. I said, Oh, the problem that Mr. Kent took the stand and told lies. I talked about my feelings about being angry and wanting to yell. I talked about, oh, the ending, how the judge nodded his head. And then my thought was that I hope that he agrees with us. Actions, I stared in disbelief. That would be one of my actions. I think that's it. I think, oh, wait, hold on. Let me see. An adjective. My best clothes. Best would be the adjective describing clothes. Let me see with the adverb. Maybe I need to go back and add an adjective or an adverb. I don't see an adverb in my writing. I could say the judge nodded his head slowly. Slowly would be an adjective. I could say I sat quietly with my family. Quietly would be the adverb. Okay, so what I want you to do is make sure you use the information in your scape chart. Make sure you're including all of that stuff in your writing. And you're going to finish up your writing on page 156 today. Okay, and remember, it's just a small narrative, so it shouldn't take up 2 pages. It should just be the 1 page. And then you are going to take a picture of your writing and post it into the Google slide that I give you. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great afternoon, and I will see you later. Bye.